what you're gonna do.
You can't fight the future.
Wrestling God.
ProWrestlingRadio.com presents.
Are you talking to me?
Pro Wrestling Radio Live on Live.
You think The Rock actually cares?
What is he doing here?
Oh, it's true.
I'm bringing everybody with me.
That's hard time.
The Be the Man. 6, 1. Can you feel it?
I hate your ever. Hold the damn phone.
That's how I roll.
You're sex Independen. Come get some. Because I've done all of that.
The king is back on his throne.
Excuse me.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
And we are live. This is Eric Gargiulo and Luke Hawks for another edition of Pro Wrestling Radio. A whole lot to cover. Really excited to be here tonight. It looks like we already have a nice little crowd in the chat room, which is very, very cool to see. Luke, welcome back to the show. Happy belated Father's Day.
What's up? Back at you, baby. Let's kick ass and take names today.
Exactly. You know what? I'm kind of exhausted. I really don't feel like taking any names today.
Okay, and we can just kick ass.
I was out in 90-degree heat trying to turn my daughter's car seat around. You know, at one point, I just thought to myself, maybe I should just let her ride on the roof.
Old school, was that Jackass out? Remember when they put the baby seat on the roof?
Oh, right.
Drove off.
Absolutely. Well, you know, we're going to get into Father's Day a little bit in the show here. Later on, I want to ask Luke a little bit about that and just experiences he's having with his son in professional wrestling. I'll talk a little bit about some of the experiences I had with my pop in wrestling. But anyway, Luke, it looks like the big news this week is your favorite wrestler, Rob Van Dam, is back. He has signed a short-term agreement with the WWE. He will be working a limited schedule, something like Chris Jericho will be working. And kind of interesting, the backstory of this. From what I understand, he was under the impression that TNA were going to resign him, and then at one point TNA just stopped returning his phone calls. So without much options, he wound up negotiating with the WWE, put this deal together. I was surprised, quite frankly. What are your thoughts on the outset?
I think it's pretty crazy. It is crazy that TNA didn't really re-sign him. Mm-hmm. But him going back to WWE, I'm not sure if I agree with that, man. I think they got so many other guys that they can be pushing. I mean, unless he's there to put guys over and build new stars, I think Rob Van Dam's over enough. You know, they don't need to bring a guy like that back in and push him to the moon. But that's the booking. Again, that's not me. So I don't know what their plans are with him, but if he's there to put over the Fandangos and the Dolphs and those guys, then so be it.
Yeah, you and I, we've talked to ECW, so I know you've watched a lot of Rob Van Dam. What are your thoughts? Are you a fan? Were you a fan? Where do you stand on Van Dam?
I liked Van Dam back in the day. He wasn't one of my favorites, but the guy's definitely talented. For a while there, he did carry ECW. He was the guy that people were paying to come and see, and he was drawing the houses. So you got to give credit where credit's due. He's very talented. At this day and age, though, I think of course he's past his prime. He's put in some good time. Is he still that major draw? I would say not. But then again, that's just my opinion. There's a lot of people who probably still go nuts over him, just like the morons who still go nuts over Shane Douglas.
Is there anybody really going nuts over Shane Douglas these days?
I mean, dude, you see these idiots. They get on these chat boards and these websites and these, and they talk about him like you could look at his YouTube channel, and if he puts a video up, you see they talk about the guy like he's God. It's like they ignore every mistake this guy makes.
Wow. Now those are names I'd like to take. I'm not lazy. I'm not too tired to take those names.
Yeah, it's more. I don't understand. It's like people just are so willing to turn the other cheek because the guy was on TV.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, the whole thing with Rob Van Dam, it's funny because, I'm kind of mixed on it. I'll tell you what, when I worked in ECW as a ring announcer back in the day, I was there, I think it was 96 through 98 off and on. And Rob was one of the coolest guys there, quite frankly. I mean, out of all the guys there, he was probably the most welcoming, and I actually had a little bit of a friendship with him before I started ring announcing. I was working the RVD tape tables, and he would come over for tapes, and I was a fan of his stuff in Japan, and we just started talking, and I mean, he was just always a super cool dude. And,
yeah, he's always been super cool. You can't take that away from him. He's a real chill, laid back guy. You never really hear about him having any problems with anybody. I've never heard somebody go, "Oh, Rob Van Dam, he's a jerk." Where you hear that about some guys, and he's that's one thing. But just because you're a nice guy at the same time doesn't mean you should be a top guy.
Well, that's exactly it. I think he's again nice guy. He did my radio show right before he went to TNA, and we went about a good hour. And I mean, couldn't have been a better guest. I mean, just always been a nice guy. But yeah, I almost feel bad saying this, but I think it's a terrible move. I just it's like, if you've watched Rob, if you didn't watch TNA and you didn't watch Rob in TNA, I could see why you're excited, because when he was in the WWE before that, he was pretty exciting. But if anybody has watched Rob in TNA over the last 3 years at all, he's looked uninspired, he's looked old, he's looked slow, he's looked rather repetitive. He hasn't changed up his game at all. And he just doesn't look like a guy. He looks like he'd be about 3 steps behind the current generation of WWE guys. So it's funny, Luke, when I see on Twitter and Facebook all these people so excited to see Rob Van Dam come back. And the first question I got to ask him is, have you watched any of his stuff in TNA? Because if you have, I can't imagine you'd be excited about it.
Very much so. And I mean, it's not the case like you take a guy like Jericho, who, I don't think has lost a step at all. I think he goes out there, he pours his heart in every match still. I mean, look how much praise he had from his match with CM Punk from the last pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And I just think Jericho really cares about what he does. And, there's a guy that doesn't need to be in WWE because he has so much other stuff going on. So he's not there to just get a paycheck. I think he's there because he genuinely loves the business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're 100% right. He hasn't lost a step, but as a matter of fact, it's kind of weird with Jericho because I almost think that he's looking his best during this run than he has in a long time, which is kind of weird because, he's had better pushes and he's been younger and he's been healthier, but I think he's looked fantastic. But yeah, the Van Dam thing, it's just so odd to me. And the other thing, too, it's like the pink elephant in the room, so to speak, in that, Rob's been very outspoken of his marijuana use. I mean, the dude was on High Times. He spent about 20 minutes on my radio show talking about the virtues of marijuana. And, WWE, they fine $2,500 for marijuana use. So, I don't know what's going to give here. I can't imagine Rob giving it up, in his 40s after, all the things he's said and campaigned about it. But, at the same time, I don't know if it's because he's a part-time guy that maybe WWE won't test him, or maybe they'll look the other way, or, I just kind of think this is going to end badly at some point.
Yeah, I do too. I definitely think it's like, will they look the other way? Because it's one of those things where like you said, he's not going to give it up at this point. He's been so outspoken about it. So, and with WWE and all, with all their, I wouldn't say problems, but issues they've had and how much, the media attacks them for things like that, if they go after Rob Van Dam, will they keep him straight-laced? Will they, if he does slip up, what will they do with him?
Yeah.
And I mean, on another note, you take a guy like Matt Striker, who they just released today. I don't know if you heard, but that's like breaking news. They released Matt Striker. And I don't know how your feelings are about him, but I think Matt Striker is talented as hell.
Oh, I don't know. We're going to disagree on this one. I think he is one of the worst announcers that I ever heard. I mean, he wanted me to. I don't have a lot of hair left as it is, but he wanted me to pull the hair out that I have left on my head, and I almost did. I mean, oh God, Luke, he was so hard to take when he would do those 3-man teams with I think it was Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler.
Really? You think that? I actually like him. I like him as a host. When I watch him host some of the shows there, I enjoy his work as him hosting, like some of the internet shows and things like that. I thought he did a good job with that. And I maybe not as an announcer, but definitely as a host. I enjoyed him as a host.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I wouldn't have pegged that. I wouldn't have pegged Luke Hawks as a Matt Striker fan.
Yeah, and I mean, my dealings with him, I always thought that he was smart. He had some good knowledge on the business.
Yes.
Just from me being around him and dealing with him when from the Indies to the time I was up there, there was no reason for me to kiss up to him or anything, or
Sure.
for him to kiss up to me. But when I heard him talk about certain things and give guys advice, he was one of the guys where I'd go, well, he makes sense. I don't think he's pulling that out of his ass. I think he's telling the guys some good advice.
Yeah. No,
So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I respect that. I respect the guy who will tell a guy, hey, you need to lose weight, or hey, you need to buff up, or hey, you need to work on your promos and take this, but you do a good job with this. Because, there's so many guys in the business that are just going to kiss up or tell a guy what they want to hear, or tell a kid, hey, man, you're awesome, and then, just to get them off their back and kick them out the door. And then the kid's thinking, hey, well, I did great, but why aren't they hiring me? Where I think Matt would be the guy to say, hey, man, you really didn't do good at this.
Yeah.
That was pretty terrible. You need to work on that. And that's one thing I like about guys like that, because too many people, well, we've discussed this before, Eric, too many people go, hey, good job, and they might not even see your match. And then you're thinking, these guys aren't going to learn from issues like that. So, that's one thing I respect Matt Stryker on.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. You definitely can't take that away from him. Now, Rob Van Dam, have you ever worked any shows with him or shared any locker rooms with him?
Rob, but actually, I got one of my movie debut when I got my SAG card was with Rob Van Dam and Batista in Wrong Side of Town, and I fought Rob Van Dam in that. It was a cheesy, terrible movie, but it was Rob Van Dam's big screen debut where he was supposed to be the lead actor, and up being Batista on the cover, which Rob got really hot about, because the producers and the makers of, I think it was Sony who made the film, if I'm not mistaken, or no, maybe I think it was Lionsgate. Okay. I don't remember, but they thought Batista was the bigger star, and Rob Van Dam's the lead in this movie, so they put Batista all over everything. They put Batista on the cover as the main guy. So, and it was supposed to be Rob Van Dam's movie. The movie was specifically written by a friend of Rob Van Dam's, and it was written for Rob Van Dam. So, that was a little bit of an issue. But, like I said, Rob, like you said before, Rob was cool as hell. So he was very easy to work with, cool. I had a fun time, fighting with him. And, it made me some money, and it also got me my SAG card, which, definitely helps me tremendously today. So my hat's off to him. Yeah.
It's funny. I don't want to digress too much, but I was listening to an interview with Terry Funk on Steve Austin's podcast. And what Terry told Austin was, I think it was in the early 80s, he started getting involved in movies and doing stunts and having little parts specifically to get his SAG card so he could get insurance. And of course, we all know Terry, and we've seen his body breaking down over the last 2-3 decades, and he said that he hasn't had to pay a whole lot of money out of pocket for these operations simply because he had his SAG card, and that he would go back to California every so often just to keep his SAG credits up. So it's kind of interesting you bring up the SAG card.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's one thing. See, Terry was awesome at that, and I like seeing Terry in the movies. So it's nice to see those transitions. You'll see Rob Van Dam again as a lead actor. No, and the one thing I like about Van Dam is, which I miss, I do think Van Dam used to have some good promos, man. I love those Fonzie Van Dam promos back in the day in ECW, and I haven't seen that in a long time. So that'll be interesting to see what WWE does with that. Because if you remember, that was an issue before. Remember when they had the first pay-per-view and Rob Van Dam? No, I believe it was the second, because Rob missed the first one, right, out of injury?
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. He did miss the first one out of injury,
Yeah, and the second one, and he came out and he got to get on the mic and do all that stuff. And, he voiced his opinion about, Rob Van Dam being able to talk and, how he was toned down, all that stuff, or watered down. So it would definitely be interesting to see the character that Rob Van Dam plays and the role he plays in WWE nowadays.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's funny too, and we'll move on, but it's funny too because from what I understand, he did his negotiations directly with Triple H, and opinions change, and guys get older and they mature, and heat settles down, but I remember Rob did not like Triple H back in the day at all. And what's even funnier,
a bunch of issues.
Yeah, and what's even funnier about that is I remember when Rob first came to the WWE, and I would run into him every once in a while, And he hated it there. I mean, he absolutely hated it there. But, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, they're paying his bills. But, I mean, he used to just bitch and complain about everything there. And it's just kind of funny seeing him back there after, even on my radio show. When he came on my radio show, like I think it was about 4 years ago, and he just, you know, wasn't happy with the way that things went down. And, you know, I mean, hey, you know, you're 40. I think he's 41. You know, he's 41. He's probably not going to have another run after this. And, you know, make your money and pop in, pop out, and have a nice life.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, and the Triple H thing, it is surprising because they did have a lot of issues. Remember when Rob hurt Triple H?
Yes.
He frog splash and landed on his throat and put him out. But, you know, there was a lot of issues. But, again, we weren't there, so
right.
We don't know really what was going on. We read what we read on the internet, and I don't know what Rob told you directly, but, you know, I'm not personal friends with Rob, so I didn't get any inside scoops from him.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, I haven't talked to the guy in years, so I don't even remember.
Yeah, so, I mean, who knows? And
right.
I mean, but you bring that up. I just recently heard something, of course, one of the internet buzzes going around that Triple H and Daniel Bryan got into it backstage after Daniel Bryan's injury from Monday night.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. You know, for those out there that don't know the story seems to be, and I'm always skeptical of these stories, Luke. You know, I always think when these stories wind up hitting the sheets and hitting the internet that there's maybe, I don't know, 25% you know, shoot and like 75% work. I think, you know, a lot of times with these stories that you know, I think somebody from the WWE, the source that supposedly leaked this stuff, a lot of times works the sheets, and I think you and I have talked about that. But
right.
Let me give the story, and then you can jump in. Story is Daniel Bryan was wrestling Randy Orton. He was supposed to go over on him. Would have been one of the biggest wins of his career. And he wound up getting injured during the match. And I believe he had like a hard time standing up, or I don't know, there was something going on. And the trainer found out. The trainer wanted him to stop the match, and he wanted to continue. And eventually, you know, they stopped the match. And when he got into the locker room, that he and Triple H reportedly had a shouting match. That Daniel Bryan, you know, was upset that they took away his moment, and you know, and that he wanted to finish the match. And you know, Triple H, you know, had his opinions, and apparently, you know, cooler heads prevailed. Let me give you a quick thoughts on that, and then I want to hear what you have to say as somebody, you know, that does this for a living, you know, fairly often. You know, for one thing, and you and I, we've both met Daniel Bryan before. I mean, I've worked on several shows with him, you know, talked to him several times. I can't ever imagine him getting mad at anybody. I can't ever imagine him yelling at anybody, especially Triple H. I really can't over a match. And I don't know. It sounds to me like a work story. It sounds to me like they planted the story, and you know, and it's no disrespect to the people that reported it because they got their sources and they're reporting what their sources say. But I don't know. I'm just a little skeptical of this one.
Right, and it could be. And I really didn't even read the story. I just read the headlines. And sometimes I don't pay attention to much stuff like that because, you know, I don't really get into the BS crap, and nor do I care.
Yeah, but you're like a broadcaster now. You have to know all this stuff.
Right, you're right. I guess I got to start paying more attention. Maybe, who knows? I have trouble reading and writing. I'm from New Orleans, so we'll see.
There you go.
But, I mean, who knows? Like I said, who knows? And honestly, who cares? As long as Daniel Bryan gets what he deserves. I think the guy's super hot right now. We discussed this last week. They could put a top title on that guy right now, and he could run and touch the stars.
Yeah.
The guy's over. He's hot. He's a great worker. You can put him in there with anybody and have a good match. Example, you know, I loved the Ryback Daniel Bryan match from a few weeks ago.
Yes,
I thought it was just awesome to put him in there with a monster and make him look so believable and watch him chop the monster down. It was great. So I mean, just kudos to Daniel Bryan. Let's see. You know, I'd like to see the WWE title on him. Yeah.
No. Oh, absolutely. Just, you know, it's one of those things. I don't know if you've ever done it with, you know, with Wildcat or with XPW or anything, or when you were with Extreme Rising. I mean, have you ever, what's the word I want to say? Have you ever talked to somebody like on the internet, like one of the reporters or something like that, and you kind of gave them a story to further one of your angles? Like you were, like, let's say you were working Stevie Richards, and you said, you told this reporter, you're like, I effing hate him. I don't like him. He tried to pull this and that, where all you were doing was working. Because I've done it when I was with CZW and we were booking angles. I mean, I've talked to guys every once in a while that wrote on the internet, and I would like leak, I would be like the leak source, but all I was doing was kind of, getting the angle over. So I wonder if they're trying to do this, because you have right now Triple H also playing that like heel character right now. So I wonder, I don't know. It just seems very convenient that you'd have this guy that's kind of playing a tweener heel, pulling the number one baby face right now, the company, out of a match because of an injury.
Of course, but I mean, I guess 90% of the time I'm just telling the truth because I hate them assholes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you do. You're the best. I mean, go out with Luke Hawx for a couple of hours, and you get more gossip out of him than and all it is basically Luke saying that he wants to beat everybody up.
Yeah, I get pissed off pretty easy. So it's just one of the things, man. With wrestling, so many egos, so many politically correct moments, and this guy's not getting something because he's not friends with the right guy, or this guy's getting a push because he is friends with the right guy.
Yeah.
I'm one of those guys who I'm never at a loss for words, really, and I always say what I feel. I'm not just going to tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah, yeah. So let me ask you this. Let's put you in Daniel Bryan's shoes, and and you're having this match, and this win is supposed to further your angle where you're going to work SummerSlam in the main event against Cena. Obviously, you're probably going to make more money in that matchup than you've made, maybe other than a WrestleMania, and you get hurt, and somehow word gets to the back that you're hurt, and they want you to stop the match, and you want to keep going. How does this end for you when you get to the back and you see Triple H?
I mean, I would speak what I feel, of course. And again, most guys wouldn't. Most guys would cower down. I'm always going to speak what I feel. It's just I don't think I've ever been really in a position where I haven't. And I mean, there's always those cases where sometimes you just go, I'll just bite my tongue because it ain't worth it today. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I'm always been one to defend myself and what I think's right. And hey, if I'm wrong, prove me wrong, because I want to know that I'm wrong, and I want to know why I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So, and if I'm wrong, I'll shake your hand and say, man, I'm wrong. Most guys don't. Most guys just get pissed off, and they'll argue, even though they're wrong. They'll argue and argue and argue until they think that their point is taken and they're eventually right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you've told me stories when you had your issues with Shane Douglas in Extreme Rising, and you told me that there were times where you bit your tongue. There were plenty of times where you told him what was on your mind.
Dude, yeah. I mean, there was cases like I would just be like, it's not worth it because I'm just going to knock this guy's teeth down his throat.
Yeah.
I mean, he's purposely, like I told you the instance where he would purposely ignore me. He would purposely not, and I say ignore, and by what I mean ignore, lock himself in rooms. Make sure to stay on the other side of the arena away from me because he was scared of me. Mm. And the last heated conversation we had, Stevie Richards was the one who had to be there and calm everything down, and Stevie stopped me from kicking Shane's teeth down his throat.
Well, let me ask you this about Shane Douglas. I don't know why I've never asked you this. I might have when we were out, but with the whole thing that you were,
cut you off. When were we out? Because
we were at Chickies and Pete's like 6 months ago.
No, that never happened.
Oh, that happened. That happened. You had your fans coming down there and bothering us. But, anyway, so you had been talking crap on Shane Douglas well before Extreme Rising ever came about, and then you started working there. You did that deal where you kind of teased something, I think, on the very first Extreme Rising show. Were there ever any plans for you guys to do a match?
Yeah, there was, and honestly, I shot him down. I wasn't interested in working with Shane because I hated him that much, and he knew he couldn't get in the ring with me. He knew he would, he couldn't hold his own against a guy like me, and they wanted to eventually put us together, but I told them that what are you going to get out of it? I'm going to go out there, I'm going to stump a mud hole in this guy because he can't go. Yeah. I'm not going to sit there and slow myself down or limit myself because this, I'm not going to put the guy over.
Yeah.
I'm not going out there and trying to make this guy look good. Somebody who I feel is not a company guy, he's always about himself.
Yeah.
He may play the company guy role, which he does well. He plays that role well. He'll make people think that, he's Mr. Company guy, Mr. I'm going to do everything right, Mr. I believe in what's right. We're going to not screw any guys over. We're not going to do this. We're going to drive this force all the way till it can't be driven no more. And in reality, you get in the back and the guy's like, I don't really know what's going on. Oh, this guy don't got it. Oh, this guy books me, so let me book this guy on these shows only because this guy books me. Not because he's talented, because the guy has no talent, but I want to book this guy because he takes care of me and he pays me well.
Yeah.
So, when you put some crap indie guys on the show for top stars only because they're giving you a payday, I mean, what does that say about you? I don't book like when I book shows, I don't book my friends. Yeah. I book the guys who work for it, the guys who I think I'm gonna get the best product out of. I'm not saying some of the guys aren't my friends, but there's a ton of guys that haven't been on any of my shows. Guys like Homicide, Papa Don, Julio De Niro, some of my closest friends in wrestling that I talk to on a regular. I mean, Eric, if that was the case, I'd be flying you down to do commentary down here. Yeah. It's just that's not in the budget, and it's not. I would not rather have anybody other than you on my show doing commentary.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's really kind of you, and it's one of those things too. Where, I mean, even me, like for somebody, for a friend of mine, that would contact me, like if you contacted me to do commentary, I would try and make it work, no matter what, even if I had to take a loss to come down and do it. But it's like one of those things where I would tell you, I'd be like, you know what, you're better off just finding your own guy that's local and working with them. I could help them. I mean, it's just, you just treat your friends differently, I think, in this business.
Right. You're right. It's just you should, but most times, as you know, and I know, that's not the case.
Yeah. It's the truth. Okay. We talked a little Shane Douglas there, and I know we digressed a little bit. So I don't know if you saw it. I'm sure you've heard about it by now. But Mark Henry, they did a deal on Monday night where Mark Henry teased his retirement, and he did this deal where he attacked Cena, and I thought it was great, and it was really well received by everything that I read in social media. I don't know if you saw it or what your thoughts are on it, even just from what you heard.
No, I missed Raw Monday actually. But I did hear about it. It was a very hot topic. I heard it was a great promo.
Yeah, and it was a surprise. It's really a surprise is what it was, because nobody really expected it, and they really hit it well.
Yeah, and I know Mark personally. I've known Mark a long time. I like Mark. I like Mark's work. I think he's a good big man. Some people might. I think the guy is believable. I think he's definitely believable as his character, and but I've been talking to Mark for a long time, and I know he's been talking about retiring. He has been talking about retiring when he was world champ. That was the last time we really hung out. When he was world champ, he was down here. We went out one night, and we hung out all night long, and that was mostly what he talked about all night. Yeah, in another year or so, I'm going to be retiring. I can't wait to go spend more time with my kids. I'm going to move down to I think somewhere in the Keys. He was saying he wanted to move, and just enjoy relaxing for the rest of his life, because he's been on the road for how many years now?
Yeah, a long time. I mean, my gosh, wasn't he in the Attitude Era? I mean, he's been on forever.
Oh, yeah, he was definitely there in the Attitude Era. I think he went there in 97, 96 or 97, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know if he was in developmental before that.
Yeah. He might have been. I know he did the Olympics, and they sponsored him in the Olympics. I remember watching it. I remember it was a big deal at the time. And then he just wound up there like shortly after the Olympics.
Right. And his first thing was with that thing with Jerry Lawler.
Right.
So, but yeah. I like I said, I know Mark's been talking about retiring for a long time now.
Isn't it
over a year? He's beat up. His body. That's a big guy. So his body, that's a lot of weight. So that's a lot of pressure on the guy's body. So I'm sure, and if you remember, he got injured. That's why he lost the belt, right? Because he got injured?
I think so. What's really crazy, if you really think about it, I mean, it's quite a story, honestly, is that he's been there for so long and that they counted him out so many times because, you know, he just got stale. He was just one of the faces in the crowd. And he's really reinvented himself the last, 2-3 years. And now he's going to have this program with John Cena. And it's taken him, I don't know, he's been there since 1999 or whatever, 2000. It's taken him all this time to get a program with John Cena for the WWE Championship.
Yeah, and I hope he gets it, which will be record breaking for him because he'll be the first black WWE champion.
Well, The Rock, you got The Rock as the first black WWE.
Yeah, but like Booker T, the quote Booker T, man, he's not a mandingo.
Yeah.
I think Mark Henry definitely deserves it. You can't knock the guy; he works hard.
Mm-hmm.
Is he a Daniel Bryan? No, he's not, but he does what he does well. And I like Mark Henry. I'll tell you a funny Mark Henry story real quick. My first time I was booked to WWE, I think it was 2003. I was a little scrawny thing. You remember me back then. I was probably
yeah, you're a little guy.
Yeah, soaking wet. And I get to Lafayette, Louisiana, and I'm walking around. I'm nervous as hell because, you hear all these stories about WWE and these guys walking on eggshells and don't say the wrong thing. Don't look at this guy. Make sure you're nice to everybody. So, I'm kind of new in the business at the time, only a couple years under my belt. I'm sweating bullets.
Yeah.
And one of the guys comes up to me, man, I wish I can remember who came up to me. It was one of the agents at the time, though. And he goes, he's like, oh, you're here to work tonight, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, you're working Mark Henry. And Mark Henry sits right there and he looks at me and he just starts rubbing his hands again and he goes, bring on the white meat. And I was scared out of my mind. I was like, this guy is going to kill me. So, I was a little bitty thing, and Mark was huge.
Yeah.
He was probably one of the hugest guys I had seen at the time because he's a monster.
Yeah.
I really didn't wrestle him. They were just messing with me that night. So that's how I began talking to Mark Henry. But, I can tell you, he scared the hell out of me. And I'm not intimidated by many people, but that was one guy that intimidated me.
Yeah. Wow, that's a great story. So what do you think? Do you think that there's any chance he winds up going over on Cena as kind of like a surprise result, or do you think that's just not going to happen?
Man, I don't know. I can say it's not going to happen because there's never been a black WWE champion. And, dude, I believe that. I believe in that stereotype. I don't know if Vince don't want it or what the deal is with that. But
it can't be coincidence at this point. I mean, they've had a WWE champion since the '60s. They've had one. And it is what it is. But it can't be coincidence.
And every time a black man has won a heavyweight championship, it has been the world title.
Yeah.
The old WCW belt. It's never been the WWE championship. So that has to come into play. That's why I'd like to see Mark get that and be the first guy, and break that record.
Yeah. I remember when it was a big deal when Ron Simmons beat Vader and won. I think he beat Vader and won.
Yeah.
And won
it was huge.
Yeah.
It was. That's what blew Bill Watts' bookings out of the water. That's what got it so talked about. They had the first black heavyweight champion.
Yeah, and it's funny too because with Watts, he was always a real proponent of pushing black wrestlers as top baby faces. I mean, he wound up having so much success with Junkyard Dog as an example. Down there that he was always looking for that black baby face, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But he's one of those guys that always gave him a shot.
Right. And Ron's a prime example. Man, Ron's an awesome guy. I think Ron is probably one of my favorite people to ever, veterans to ever be around and travel with and spend some time with on the road because the guy has so much knowledge. I'll tell you a funny Ron Simmons story now that we're on it. I spent a lot of time with Ron, and I got a few Ron Simmons stories, but one was Tommy. I was with Tommy Dreamer, and we were talking about Ron Simmons. I don't remember why, but he said they were, this is recently, probably within the last 3 or 4 years, I'm sure. But Dreamer's saying they were all drinking all night at a bar. So Ron Simmons is, BSing, joking around like he usually is. He's kind of loud. He's goofy. He likes to have fun. And he's bragging about how he can bench press 500 pounds.
Yeah.
So they're going, there's no way in hell, you're too old, maybe back in the day, blah, blah, blah. They said they left the bar right then and there in the middle of the night, went to a 24-hour gym, no warm up, no nothing, drunk as hell. Ron Simmons puts 500 on the bar, hits it once like it ain't nothing, and just shrugs his shoulders and like, yeah, mother,
Wow.
checks it out, and just walks the hell off.
Wow. I mean, there are just some people, man, you meet in this business that just have such freakish strength. I mean, you can be, I get jealous half the time.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. But Ron Simmons, he was a bad dude, bro.
Yeah.
Ron Simmons was one of those dudes you probably didn't want to play with because he, like you said, he was freakishly strong.
Yeah. Oh no, he was a real deal back in the day for sure. Let me ask you this. CM Punk and Brock Lesnar, they did a big angle on Monday night. Punk turned babyface. It looks like they're going to do the match with Brock either at SummerSlam or Money in the Bank. What are your thoughts on Punk as a babyface?
I like it because I think he'll definitely draw more. I believe so. I think when Punk's a babyface, they do a lot more with him. And I think he'll sell a lot more merchandise, which means more money for the company, of course, which they love.
Sure.
So, is he viable as a heel? Yeah, but I don't think he needs to be a heel. I think Punk is more successful as a babyface than he is as a heel. I might be wrong, but I mean, what do you think about it?
It's one of those things where I think that it's a little too soon. I think there's a lot of potential there in Punk as a babyface. I mean, we've already seen it. But I think it's too soon. I mean, he hasn't even been a heel for a year. I mean, it's been under a year since he's been a full-fledged heel, and I think there was still a lot of gas in that tank. I think he was an awesome heel. I think him and Paul were a great combination together, and I think that they probably should have kept them together one more year, and then maybe do this turn after WrestleMania. Because
now, why do you think they pulled him from Paul?
From what I understood, they're trying to balance the baby faces on the house shows. And the problem is they don't have another baby face other than Randy Orton that's even close to John Cena. So when they split the house shows, they put Orton on the one house show, and they put Cena on the other house show, the SmackDown and the Raw house show. And the SmackDown house show, I can't even talk today, house shows aren't doing well at all. So now by having a second strong baby face. What's that?
They never do.
Yeah, I mean, but that's why that was the catalyst behind this, is that they wanted a second strong babyface.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see. Like I said earlier, who knows? I mean, they're the bookers. Who knows? We can speculate all we want, but who really knows? I mean, is it good? I think it's good for Punk. I think Bravo, he can be the face of the company again, hopefully. Or they can build a guy up like Daniel Bryan and put him as the face of the company. But I think they definitely need, someone other than John Cena to play that role.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's take a quick time out here. We've been going now for almost 40 minutes, and throw some plugs in here. Wildcat Sports, I know you got a lot going on with Wildcat Sports, and I wanted to ask you about your upcoming match with Matt Hardy. So I think now's a good time to talk about it. I know you're pumping it pretty heavy on Facebook and in social media. I'm excited about it that you got Matt Hardy on your show in your hometown. Talk a little bit about what's going on with Wildcat.
It's hot, man. Wildcat's really blowing up. We're just doing better and better. The tickets just went on sale actually for that show, and floor is pretty much sold out. We got about 20 tickets remaining still for the floor for the Matt Hardy show, and that's what without any advertising, man. We're blessed. This was just from our crowds that constantly come to our show, and we also sold a lot of general admission tickets. So I think we're going to expect well over 1,000 people at this next show, and it's not till August 24th. Yeah. So we got plenty of time to build it up. I haven't put out any posters. I just got the posters today. I'm not gonna put them out on the town for probably at least another three weeks at least, because I don't like them to sit out there too long, and I think they get stale and people forget, or they'll get torn down.
Sure.
But yeah, it's a big deal to have Matt come in, even though he's a scumbag. Even though I'm gonna kick his teeth down his throat, and I'm interested to see how my crowd's gonna react, because every place we go, Matt's that half and half. Half the crowd loves him, half the crowd hates him. The ECW crowd wanted to see him die. When I went to, when I fought him in our first match in Monroe, same thing. He was over, but, a lot of people there wanted to see him get his ass kicked. So, it's going to be interesting to see, because, the fans here, A lot of them love him. But then again, I'm the hometown guy. So a lot of them pay to see me, and they come to see me. I draw good numbers here. So I don't know if it's going to be a split crowd, if it's going to be one-sided, or what. It's going to be an interesting take on this event, and I'm happy to have Bestia back also. I mean, we're going to have Bestia back on the card from Mexico. So it's nice to have guys like that and have a little variety on our show and give this crowd something different that they don't always see, and not just the usual guys that we have come in. I like to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Of everybody you got in Wildcat right now, let's take yourself out of the equation because I know how great you are. But who is the up-and-comer there that if there's one guy you want to tell the listeners out here to keep your eyes on, if you only have one eye, who is it?
There's two of them, actually. There's Matt Lancey and Buku Dow. Those guys. And Blake Wilder, too, man. Blake Wilder's been doing well, but the only problem with Blake, he seems to be injury-prone. He was one of our top students of the first class. He came in and immediately almost tore his shoulder out. Not almost. He did tear his shoulder out. Had shoulder surgery. Was out 6 months. Just came back. He's been back for a few months now. And now our last show, which was a few weeks ago, he tore his MCL in his knee.
Wow.
So if Blake could stay healthy, Blake's very over with the crowd. Buku Dow's over with the crowd. And Matt Lancey's just one of those guys who's an animal, which some of the Philly fans are familiar with these guys because they got to see him perform at the Extreme Rising show when they did a tag match. So you just check these guys out, man. If you can, look it up. Look them up on YouTube. Watch the Wildcat show on YouTube and check out some of our product because we definitely have some guys that you might not heard of, but you will love. It's definitely a different atmosphere and a different vibe than the usual guys you see from the Philly crowds or the LA crowds or those East Coast spot fest crowds, I would like to say. These guys are different and they have a lot more to bring to the table than just spot. I think one of the main things we have down here is we have that old school psychology, which really draws the fans into it. They're just not here to see cool moves. They want to know, they like the feuds that are going on. They like the matches because the matches just tell more story other than, a big move. Yeah.
So, I know you got Matt Hardy coming down there. You and Stevie Richards were having a hell of a series before Extreme Rising went down. Any chance of Stevie coming back down there for a rematch?
Yeah, Stevie actually came down for one of our shows too. He came down a few months ago, and we wanted to get Stevie back on the last show, but he was already booked. Anytime to have Stevie around is awesome because Stevie has so much knowledge.
Yeah.
Like this is one thing a lot of people don't know about Stevie Richards. Stevie Richards drew some of the highest ratings in WWE history.
Yeah.
When he was in Right to Censor, and they did that whole Right to Censor thing, they were drawing the highest ratings of those, in those segments.
Sure.
Had the highest rated segments in like Raw history, I believe. So, that's kudos to Stevie Richards. You got to give credit where credit's due again.
Oh, for sure.
People, tuned in.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
I don't think Stevie gets enough credit that he deserves because the guy is talented. The guy has worked everywhere. And we've talked about this several times.
Yeah.
I mean, you've talked about how long you've known Stevie for. And, the incidents like when Stevie came back to ECW, a lot of guys thought he had a big head. And, Stevie can be misread, and I'm not saying he didn't. I wasn't friends with Stevie back then, but I'm just saying the guy's been around. He's wrestled for every major company there is, held jobs for extended amounts of time there. So to have a guy like that come into our locker room and sit down with our guys, God, man, it's a blessing because our guys pick up so much off that. Where you get a lot of guys who just come in and they want to take the money and run.
Yeah.
Where guys like Stevie Richards, and again guys like Al Snow. Al Snow always, Al Snow goes on a show, he always sits there, he watches the show, he criticizes the matches, he pulls the guys aside and says, hey, you should do this, And like Stevie's one of those guys who does the same thing. Yeah. So I'd much rather have guys like that than guys who just want to come in and get a booking and roll out.
Yeah. I've been told that you're slacking a little bit because you didn't mention your website.
Oh, yeah, our website. Check us out, wildcatsports.com. We got a great guy who took over who's been promoting it, and it just happened yesterday. I ain't gonna drop his name because I don't know if I should, and I don't know if it's if it's the right thing to do, because people might say I'm a little biased. But the guy who took over our website is doing a great job, and it's going to blow up a lot more. We actually slacked on the website itself for a long time. I'm not one of those internet savvy guys, so I'm not one of those guys who gets on every day and updates everything. So the guy who took over the site is what though, and I think our site will expand tremendously in the next month or so.
Beautiful, beautiful. And for those of you listening out there, it's Wildcat with a K. It's Wildcat Sports.
Yeah, Wildcat. Just saying, same thing with Twitter. It's Wildcat Sports, Wildcat with a K. And speaking of Wildcat, the one good thing about Wildcats around here, I don't know if you heard the story. There's this major story going on across the U.S. that a 13-year-old boy killed a 5-year-old girl using WWE style moves.
Yes.
Well, the media has had a frenzy with this thing. I just went to Fox News today, did another interview with Fox News, who I've actually done a few interviews with, in the past. So once this happened, they contacted me and said, hey, we want to have you come in and, speak on the subject and what can we do to, protect our children from this situation. And so it's a blessing to be able to go out there and be that guy to where, hey, when something goes on with wrestling in the Louisiana area, they say, we call Luke Hawks, we call Wildcat Sports.
Oh, that's awesome. That's fantastic. I'll just throw a couple quick plugs out there, and then I have a question to ask you, picking up from our last radio show. Somebody asked me to ask you this in the chat room. So a couple quick things. One, I promised my friends over at the Fans Podcast that I would give them a plug. They've been really kind in plugging my tweets and plugging the radio show lately. So follow them on Twitter at the Fans Podcast, and they do their own podcast. Really great stuff, and that's at thefanspodcast.podomatic.com and wrestle-talk.com. Those are really good guys. And I'll give a plug. I'm in a generous mood today, Luke. So I'll give a plug to my good friend Brett Clandaniel, who just received, I think it was his 2 millionth visitor on WrestleChat.net. So congratulations to those guys, hardworking fellas over there, and really great news site. I'll
very supportive of Wildcat. Those guys, I think they're the best news site out there.
Yes.
They cover a lot of subjects. I don't think they're one-sided. I think they go after everything. And, like I said, they're one of the websites. They're the main website that really picks up on Wildcat and covers it. So, major props to WrestleChat.net.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Big props to those guys. I'll throw a couple selfish plugs in there. CamelClutchBlog.com for all the latest wrestling blogs and MMA blogs, wrestling results, pay-per-view predictions. I have a real great staff of writers now writing for the Camel Clutch blog, and it's a lot of fun. You can download the apps. The Camel Clutch blog app is in the Android store and in the iTunes store, and on the app you can actually listen to these pro wrestling radio shows. There's a podcast tab on there, and you can have that right on your phone. So it's very cool. It's been downloaded a lot, and if you do download it, do me a favor and give me a review. It really helps a lot. Same thing with iTunes. If you missed any of today's Pro Wrestling Radio, you can download it in a couple of different places. One is on iTunes, and I know there are a lot of people that subscribe because I see the numbers, but it would really help if you can give us some reviews out there. You can also catch it on ProWrestlingRadio.com. I try and update the website with 1 or 2 podcasts a week, usually a classic podcast, and then the new one with Luke and I whenever that goes up online as well. And, of course, my Twitter handle at Camel Clutch Blog. All right, Luke, what's that?
So you're blowing up.
I'm trying. Listen.
Pretty soon you're going to forget about us small folks.
Never. I've known you now for how many years? I haven't forgot about you.
A lot, but and I love it. Let's make it a lot more.
You got that right. Listen. You left the radio show last time about 2 weeks ago, and you left us with this big tease about a 900 number story. And
I forgot about that.
Yes, and one of the listeners in the chat room actually just reminded me. He came into the chat room. He said, "Did I miss Luke telling the 900 number story?" And I said, "No, not yet." So, Luke, you teased us 2 weeks ago with it. What's the deal with the 900 number?
Okay, it's not a long story, but it's a pretty funny one. So, remember in the early 90s. Hulk Hogan had a WWE 900 number.
Yes.
I don't remember what it was. It was like the Hulkamania hotline or whatever.
Yes.
So, of course, I was kind of a hoodlum kid, and I didn't live in the best neighborhood. But in the neighborhood, they had one house where this one guy had money, and he had a phone on his porch. So, every day, even though the number was a recording and said the same thing, I would go on this guy's porch, use his phone, and repeatedly call this 1-900 Hulkamania number and charge the hell out of this guy's phone bill until one day he got smart enough and took his phone off the porch. And I mean, he had to figure out that's where it was coming from.
That's awesome. Well, I got a pretty good story like that too, and I'm afraid to even say it because it might ruin my image a little bit. But just remember, I was about 17 years old. So we're talking 23 years ago. So I wasn't as nice of a guy 23 years ago as I am today. So,
yeah, I was probably about 10 when I did that.
Yeah. So at least you had an excuse. You were 10. I was just a jerk 17-year-old kid. So I was hooking up with this girl, okay, and so I was probably what's that?
I said, what?
So actually, I was probably a little older because I was out of high school. So let's say I was 19. So I was hooking up with this girl, and I would go to her house, and we would hook up, and her parents were never home, and she would like go in the other room, and she had, I don't know if you remember those music video channels where you could like request.
Of course.
You can request your video, but it cost you like $1 like every time you request a video. So I would call up and request all these heavy metal videos whenever she would leave the room. And and of course the parents got the phone bill, weren't too happy about it. But yeah, that was my similar experience with the 900 number.
It's funny, man. It's the things kids do.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious though. Sometimes I'll just sit back and I'll like something like that will pop in my head, and I'll just laugh and laugh and laugh to myself because I'm thinking, God, this guy probably had a $500 or $600 phone bill, you know?
Exactly. Okay, so we have what do we got? 10 minutes left. Let's go back to the wrestling talk here. You and I, we talked 2 weeks ago, and at that time, TNA had just announced that they signed Rampage Jackson. You liked it. I really wasn't so hot on it. And since that time, they've had him on TV 2 weeks in a row. He had the 1 week where he and Kurt Angle had like a stare down, like a stare off, and they went off the air. Then the next week, he came out and he rescued Kurt from Aces and E, and I think that they hugged or shook hands or something like that. And I'm just blown away that they had this angle 2 weeks ago where they had this real intense stare down. And then the next week, they're helping each other out. I mean, I don't know, Luke. I think at this point, Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff, I mean, they are smart guys. Like them or not, they are smart guys. But I don't think they have a clue when it comes to booking MMA fighters in pro wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I didn't see it, but from what you tell me, I never watched TNA, by the way. I mean, shoot me now. Like, I'm guilty. I never watched TNA. But so most of the time I forget it's on.
Yeah.
But, it's one of them things where...
I think the people that watch TNA would probably rather shoot themselves.
It's one of those things that, it could be a trick. What if, what if Rampage is in Aces and Eights? What if he goes to Aces and Eights? What if he helped him this week? But, it's kind of just playing mind games. I guess it's too early to tell. I don't even really think we should, kind of discuss it. I guess we got to see where it, plays out and goes to.
You're being very politically correct lately with TNA. Are you going to wind up doing one of these gut checks in the next couple of weeks?
I don't think I'll be doing a gut check, but I like TNA. Let's say TNA is the #1 wrestling company out there.
You said you don't even watch them.
Yeah. Okay, but I'm happy they're around. I don't watch TNA, but I'm definitely happy they're around. Even if the product is, if I don't like some of the things they do, it's employing some people, and when they do pay people, they're paying guys. So it's a chance for my friends and some other guys in wrestling to get a job. So
yeah,
and get paychecks from wrestling, and you got to applaud that. I'd rather TNA be around and have bad storylines or have bad booking than them not be around and. There'll be more guys in the indie scene. So
yeah, no, that's true. That's true. That's absolutely true. So, speaking of TNA, Sting has been doing a lot of interviews, and he's out there promoting this movie that he's doing. Did you do this movie with him? I know you do a lot of movies.
No, I don't even know what movie Sting did. I've never been a Sting fan, so I wish Sting would disappear off the face of the earth. And the only thing I'd really like to see Sting do, and I think we talked about this before, is WrestleMania, Undertaker. I think that's a good major draw, and that's something I would be interested in seeing Sting do. Otherwise than that, I wish Sting would never appear in wrestling again.
Well, that brings me to my point. And in a couple of these interviews, Sting has flat out said that he would love to wrestle The Undertaker, and he would love to do it at WrestleMania, which is kind of weird because you usually don't hear a guy saying that's under contract with another company. And Sting signs, I don't know how many people out there are aware of this, but Sting's contracts with TNA are year to year. He's one of the few guys that goes year to year with them, which is why a lot of rumors pop up right around WrestleMania time with Sting, because, if you haven't seen him on TV in like February or March, at that point people are thinking he hasn't resigned, he's signed with WWE. But the fact that he's out there talking about this, it's really interesting. And you just said it. You said you'd like to see it happen. I'm kind of on the opposite side of the fence there, Luke, where I wanted to see it happen several years ago, but I think that Undertaker has really, really upped the game at WrestleMania the last couple of years. I mean, he's had this phenomenal run of fantastic matches the last 5 WrestleManias where he set the bar so high, and I've watched Sting at TNA, and he's had some good matches, and for a guy his age, I think it's remarkable. I think he does really well, but I don't think there's any way that he could go in there at his age and, A, live up to the hype, and B, get a match out of The Undertaker that's anything close to anything Taker's had like the last 5 years.
Right, and I don't know. Because literally, if Sting's on TV, I wouldn't bat an eye at it. So,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you. Like I say, I don't watch TNA. Dude, if Sting's on TNA, I'm definitely not watching TNA. Like, I'm turning it off. That's just how much I dislike Sting. I've never been a Sting fan. I didn't like him when he was in WCW. I didn't like him when he was the hot baby face with the blonde hair. Sting has never been a draw to Luke Hawx.
I met Sting when I was a teenager and asked to take a picture with him, but he wouldn't take one because he said he was hungover.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's kind of cool, Sting. Maybe I'll give him a chance.
There you go.
You just made me a Sting fan instantly.
There you go. So, wrapping up the show here, we have a few minutes left. I put up a blog today over at camelclutchblog.com talking about the 10 biggest upsets in WWE history. And I'm not just talking about championship matches. I'm talking about big upsets. What do you remember? I mean, either as a fan or, just, yourself in the business, maybe you're on a WWE show. Is there any match that you remember where the result just completely surprised you?
Of course. I think the number one match of all time with the upset would have to be 1, 2, 3 Kid and Razor Ramon. I mean, when you said that, that's the first thing that jumped in my head. I know it's probably the most commercial one, but it's one of those ones where I think, man, that was major. It was big for Pac's career,
Yeah.
That's what really got him that big push and got people believing him. And as a matter of fact, it's funny you mentioned that because last night I watched an old match on YouTube that Pac had tweeted. It was him versus
Jerry Lynn, Bret Hart.
No. It was WWE.
Jeff Jarrett.
Iron Mike Sharp.
Okay.
Yeah. So and I enjoyed it. And I'm watching 1, 2, 3 Kid as versus Iron Mike Sharp, and I was like, man, it was a quick match, but he was so different at that time. Like it was a different character and style than anybody else was doing in WWE. So, it was a nice change of pace.
It's great too when you look at that, and and that was absolutely on the list. In wrestling, they've tried to do this, many times over the years, where they try and take this upset and they make a new star, but it never really works. For whatever reason, I guess they just never really commit to it. Like, look at Shelton Benjamin when he pinned Triple H. That was supposed to make him a new star, but then the next week you had Evolution beating him down, and then Triple H beats him 3 weeks in a row, and he doesn't get over. And I think, 1, 2, 3 Kid was really the best success story out of any of those guys. That you took a guy that was being portrayed as a jobber and had him get an upset, and you stuck with him, and he became a star out of it. I think it's interesting because he's really the one guy that made it work, made the angle work.
Yeah, I don't remember the Shelton thing.
Yeah. You don't remember that?
No, not at all.
No. As a kid, this wasn't on my list, but I did a title list a couple weeks ago. As a kid, my biggest shock, biggest upset that I watched as a kid was Iron Sheik beating Bob Backlund for the title. I mean, that was just crazy.
Yeah.
It was just, I never saw it coming. I mean, I wasn't in the newsletters or anything back then, but you kind of had a feel for guys that were strong and guys that were coming up and guys that were getting big pushes. And Sheik wasn't even really getting that huge of a push at the time. I mean, he was a singles guy, but he hadn't had any big wins. Usually the heels would get a big win over a babyface, and then they would wrestle the champ. But Sheik just kind of like went right to the champ, which kind of didn't make any sense. And of course, he wound up being a transition guy to Hogan, but I didn't know that at the time as I'm watching. I'm a kid, but that one was really the one that surprised me as a kid.
I gotta tell you, you're showing the age because I know it now because I watched it and it's been, of course, driven through our heads all those years. But that was before my time.
Sure. Yeah. And I kind of had a feeling you'd go with the 1, 2, 3 kid because that's more your time when you were a kid and watching wrestling.
Right. That was prime. That was probably my prime wrestling time.
Yeah.
Those late '80s, early '90s was, when it was probably the most influential to me, and I tried not to miss an episode back then. Yeah,
me too. Well, when I was a kid anyway. So, we have about 90 seconds, 2 minutes left. Why don't we wrap up? One of the things I wanted to throw at you today, we're doing the show, we're taping the show, well, we're live now, but if you're listening to the show on tape, we're a couple of days after Father's Day, and Luke, you have 2 boys, 2 beautiful boys, and I know you're an awesome dad, because I see all the things, and I know all the things you do with your boys. Just kind of pro wrestling memories, either with your dad or you as their dad. I mean, with me, it was my dad taking me to the matches, to the Spectrum, all the time when I was a kid, and bitching and moaning during the last match, and he wanted to leave before the traffic rush got out of there. that was my dad, and but no, I mean, but just him, taking me to the shows and really just bitching about the parking and stuff. But I mean, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been able to go to those shows, and who knows, where I'd be today. For you, I don't know what kind of. I know you and your oldest son, you're doing a lot with him in wrestling. What are it's Father's Day, you as a dad, your dad, lay it on me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any memories with my dad, so to say. My real, I was adopted, all that stuff, and I know my real dad. It's not like he's some lost guy. I don't know where he's at, but we chat every now and then. But my dad took me to my first pro wrestling experience. I think I talked to you about this back in the day. It was like right after Mid-South kind of ended around here. Oh, excuse me. And there was this new company starting up. I think it was the NWF at the time. It was run by Buck Robley. And that was my first experience with pro wrestling, where I got to be live and up close. That's when I ran the locker room with Paul Orndorff, which I told you about. And it's when I met Terry Funk. Terry Funk was the first wrestler I met. And it was a great experience for me. And now the thing with me is I always knew, especially back then, I was like 10 years old, I knew I wanted to be a pro wrestler. It's all I ever wanted in life. So to see my son want to be one and not really push it on him means a lot to me, and to get to spend this time with him and bring him to the shows with me, and he travels on the road with me, and he's just so genuinely interested in it. It's not something I pushed on him. It's not something I said, hey, you got to be a wrestler like your dad. It's not, he looks up to me. I remember, it's awesome when to see your kids in like first grade, and he's drawing pictures for his project of a wrestling ring, and with the wrestlers and with his dad, and what he wants to be. So it's nice to have that, I guess, second generation thing go on, where I think he's going to follow my footsteps, and I think he'll exceed me in pro wrestling. And no matter how good I do, he's going to do way more better than I would.
Yeah, so, he's got a great look, that's for sure.
Man, he's got a look. He can talk the talk. Let's just hope and he's a kid still. So the one thing I always say is you can't teach heart. Yeah. So I just hope he has the heart and the drive when he gets in it, and it actually starts going through the training, and he's getting hurt and he's getting injured all the time. Well, not injured, but getting hurt all the time. Yeah. Hopefully he doesn't really get injured. But it's a rough business. That's why most guys quit as soon as they start. They say they have the passion for it, but then as soon as they start bumping or doing push-ups and sit-ups, they're out the door. And I hope my son has that heart and drive, and he loves it enough that, he really takes it as far as he can go with it.
Yeah, no, good stuff. Well, that'll about do it for us this week. We'll come back in about 2 weeks and catch up with all the latest news. Luke, it was awesome. Really great show. I hope that dude with the 900 number wasn't listening because, with the millions you're worth, who knows what kind of lawsuit that he's going to file against you. And, I'm looking forward to good things out of Wildcat Sports over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, me too. So I'm looking forward to it. And I think we're going to really, I think we'll be expanding soon. Yeah. So as long as we keep doing what we're doing the right thing. I'm not trying to, spend money that we don't have. I'm not trying to do these overly excessive things to try and get the company out there. I'm just concentrating on having good shows with good matches and having a good product and letting the product speak for itself. And, you never know. I don't think we'll ever be as big as WWE. I don't know how big we'll get, but, I think we'll definitely grow larger than what we are now.
Brett in the chat room wants you guys to expand to Philly.
Yeah, tell Brett to give me about $20,000 and talk.
Amen to that. All right, brother. Thanks again, and we'll hear from you all in about 2 weeks. And if you missed any of today's radio show, you can catch it on ProWrestlingRadio.com. Again, on iTunes. It's out there. Just type in Pro Wrestling Radio on iTunes or on the Camel Clutch blog app, available in the Google Play Store and the iTunes Store.
Show, and I mean, it's not the case like you take a guy like Jericho, who, I don't think has lost a step at all. I think he goes out there, he pours his heart in every match still. I mean, look how much praise he had from his match with CM Punk from the last pay-per-view. Yeah. And I just think Jericho really cares about what he does. And, there's a guy that doesn't need to be in WWE because he has so much other stuff going on. So he's not there to just get a paycheck. I think he's there because he genuinely loves the business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're 100% right. He hasn't lost a step, but as a matter of fact, it's kind of weird with Jericho because I almost think that he's looking his best during this run than he has in a long time, which is kind of weird because, he's had better pushes and he's been younger and he's been healthier, but I think he's looked fantastic. But yeah, the Van Dam thing, it's just so odd to me. And the other thing, too, it's like the pink elephant in the room, so to speak, in that, Rob's been very outspoken of his marijuana use. The dude was on High Times. He spent about 20 minutes on my radio show talking about the virtues of marijuana. And, WWE, they fine $2,500 for marijuana use. So, I don't know what's going to give here. I can't imagine Rob giving it up, in his 40s after, all the things he's said and campaigned about it. But, at the same time, I don't know if it's because he's a part-time guy that maybe WWE won't test him, or maybe they'll look the other way, or, I just kind of think this is going to end badly at some point.
Yeah, I do too. I definitely think it's like, will they look the other way? Because it's one of those things where like you said, he's not going to give it up at this point. He's been so outspoken about it. So, and with WWE and all, with all their, I wouldn't say problems, but issues they've had and how much, the media attacks them for things like that, if they go after Rob Van Dam, will they keep him straight-laced? Will they, if he does slip up, what will they do with him?
Yeah.
On another note, you take a guy like Matt Stryker.
Chris Jericho will be working, and kind of interesting, the backstory of this. From what I understand, he was under the impression that TNA were going to resign him, and then at one point TNA just stopped returning his phone calls. So without much options, he wound up negotiating with the WWE, put this deal together. I was surprised, quite frankly. What are your thoughts on the outset?
I think it's pretty crazy. It is crazy that TNA didn't really re-sign him. Mm-hmm. But him going back to WWE, I'm not sure if I agree with that, man. I think they got so many other guys that they can be pushing. I mean, unless he's there to put guys over and build new stars, I think Rob Van Dam's over enough. They don't need to bring a guy like that back in and push him to the moon. But that's the booking. Again, that's not me. So I don't know what their plans are with him, but if he's there to put over the Fandangos and the Dolphs and those guys, then so be it.
Yeah, you and I, we've talked to ECW, so I know you've watched a lot of Rob Van Dam. What are your thoughts? Are you a fan? Were you a fan? Where do you stand on Van Dam?
I liked Van Dam back in the day. He wasn't one of my favorites, but the guy's definitely talented. for a while there, he did carry ECW. He was the guy that people were paying to come and see, and he was drawing the houses. So you got to give credit where credit's due. He's very talented. At this day and age, though, I think of course he's past his prime. He's put in some good time. Is he still that major draw? I would say not. But then again, that's just my opinion. There's a lot of people who probably still go nuts over him, just like the morons who still go nuts over Shane Douglas.
Is there anybody really going nuts over Shane Douglas these days?
I mean, dude, you see these idiots. They get on these chat boards and these websites and these, and they talk about him like you could look at his YouTube channel, and if he puts a video up, you see they talk about the guy like he's God. It's like they ignore every mistake this guy makes.
Wow. Now those are names I'd like to take. I'm not lazy. I'm not too tired to take those names.
Yeah, it's more. I don't know who they just released today. I don't know if you heard, but that's like breaking news. They released Matt Striker. And I don't know how your feelings are about him, but I think Matt Striker's talented as hell.
Oh, I don't know. We're going to disagree on this one. I think he is one of the worst announcers that I ever heard. I mean, he wanted me to. I don't have a lot of hair left as it is, but he wanted me to pull the hair out that I have left on my head, and I almost did. I mean, oh God, Luke, he was so hard to take when he would do those 3-man teams with I think it was Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler.
Really? You think that? I actually like him. I like him as a host. When I watch him host some of the shows there, I enjoy his work as him hosting some of the internet shows and things like that. I thought he did a good job with that. And I maybe not as an announcer, but definitely as a host. I enjoyed him as a host.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I wouldn't have pegged that. I wouldn't have pegged Luke Hawx as a Matt Striker fan. Yeah,
and I mean, my dealings with him, I always thought that he was smart. He had some good knowledge on the business.
Yes.
Just from me being around him and dealing with him when from the indies to the time I was up there. There was no reason for me to kiss up to him or anything, or for him to kiss up to me. But when I heard him talk about certain things and give guys advice, he was one of the guys where I'd go, well, he makes sense. I don't think he's pulling that out of his ass. I think he's telling the guys some good advice.
Yeah. No,
so.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I respect that. I respect the guy who will tell a guy, hey, you need to lose weight, or hey, you need to buff up, or hey, you need to work on your promos and take this, but you do a good job with this. Because, there's so many guys in the business that are just going to kiss up or tell a guy what they want to hear, or tell a kid, hey, man, you're awesome, and then, just to get him off their back and kick them out the door, and then the kid's thinking, hey, well, I did great, but why aren't they hiring me? Where I think Matt would be the guy and say, hey, man, you really didn't do good at this.
Yeah.
That was pretty terrible. You need to work on that. And that's one thing I like about guys like that, because too many people, well, we've discussed this before, Eric, too many people go, hey, good job, and they might not even see your match. And then you're thinking, you don't understand. It's like, people just are so willing to turn the other cheek because the guy was on TV.
Yeah.
It's like, it's crazy.
Yeah, the whole thing with Rob Van Dam, it's funny because, I'm kind of mixed on it. I'll tell you what, when I worked in ECW as a ring announcer back in the day, I was there, I think it was 96 through 98 off and on, and Rob was one of the coolest guys there, quite frankly. I mean, out of all the guys there, he was probably the most welcoming, and I actually had a little bit of a friendship with him before I started ring announcing. I was working the RVD tape tables, and he would come over for tapes, and I was a fan of his stuff in Japan, and we just started talking, and I mean, he was just always a super cool dude. And
yeah, he's always been super cool. You can't take that away from him. He's a real chill, laid back guy. You never really hear about him having any problems with anybody. I've never heard somebody go, oh, Rob Van Dam, he's a jerk. Yeah. Where you hear that about some guys, and he's that's one thing. But just because you're a nice guy at the same time doesn't mean you should be a top guy.
Well, that's exactly it. I think he's again nice guy. He did my radio show right before he went to TNA, and we went about a good hour. And I mean, couldn't have been a better guest. I mean, just always been a nice guy. But yeah, I almost feel bad saying this, but I think it's a terrible move. I just it's like if you've watched Rob, if you didn't watch TNA and you didn't watch Rob in TNA, I could see why you're excited, because when he was in the WWE before that, he was pretty exciting. But if anybody has watched Rob in TNA over the last 3 years at all, he's looked uninspired, he's looked old, he's looked slow, he's looked rather repetitive. He hasn't changed up his game at all. And he just doesn't look like a guy. He looks like he'd be about 3 steps behind the current generation of WWE guys. So it's funny, Luke, when I see on Twitter and Facebook all these people so excited to see Rob Van Dam come back. And the first question I got to ask him is, have you watched any of his stuff in TNA? Because if you have, I can't imagine you'd be excited about it.
Very much.
What you gonna do?
You can't fight the future.
Wrestling God.
ProWrestlingRadio.com presents
Are you talking to me?
Pro Wrestling Radio Live Online.
You think The Rock actually cares?
What is he doing here?
Oh, it's true.
I'm bringing everybody with me.
That's hard time.
To be the man. 6, 1. Can you feel it?
I hate your ever. Hold the damn phone.
That's how I roll.
You're sex independent. Come get some. Because I've done all of that.
The king is back on his throne.
Excuse me.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
And we are live. This is Eric Gargiulo and Luke Hawks for another edition of Pro Wrestling Radio. A whole lot to cover. Really excited to be here tonight. It looks like we already have a nice little crowd in the chat room, which is very, very cool to see. Luke, welcome back to the show. Happy belated Father's Day.
What's up? Back at you, baby. Let's kick ass and take names today.
Exactly. You know what? I'm kind of exhausted. I really don't feel like taking any names today.
Okay, and we can just kick ass.
I was out in 90-degree heat trying to turn my daughter's car seat around. You know, at one point, I just thought to myself, maybe I should just let her ride on the roof.
Old school, what's that Jackass out? Remember when they put the baby seat on the roof?
Oh, right.
Drove off.
Absolutely. Well, you know, we're going to get into Father's Day a little bit in the show here. Later on, I want to ask Luke a little bit about that and just experiences he's having with his son in professional wrestling. I'll talk a little bit about some of the experiences I had with my pop in wrestling. But anyway, Luke, it looks like the big news this week is your favorite wrestler, Rob Van Dam, is back. He has signed a short-term agreement with the WWE. He will be working a limited schedule, something like